Now I'd like to introduce our next presenters. Joann Kropp, Vice President of Product and Data Strategy at ALM, and David Fortino, Senior Vice President of Audience Marketing and Product at NetLine, will discuss how ALM has grown to build the most successful gated content monetization and applications solution in their market. So please welcome Joann and David.
Thank you. Good to see you. Yeah, so we were sitting listening to the prior session, and I had a bunch of notes here for our session, and we're sitting here nodding our heads thinking half of the stuff that Anita was talking about were very much rooted in a lot of the ideas that we were about to share today. So what I'd like to propose, I think on the fly, is let's channel some of that spirit that Anita has placed into the room, and we will work that into the narrative of the general session. As some of you might know, I'm Dave Fortino. We've spent the last few years going through a series similar like this. The most recent one has been with Inc. and their VP of Marketing kind of sharing their story of adopting NetLine's platform to drive revenue growth for their business. Joann's been kind enough to share her story. So after this brief moment here of explaining that, I'd like to turn it over to her, and we'll kind of riff along and learn a little bit more about the journey of ALM entering the lead gen space, what it's meant to work with outside organizations, even to Anita's points around changing organizations afraid of change, external collaboration. Those were all really pertinent points. But so before turning it over, I just want to briefly introduce NetLine. NetLine owns and operates a publisher-specific platform aimed at helping B2B publishers augment their revenue streams and drive revenue growth, largely connected to gated content experiences. And so with that said, I'd like to kind of rewind the tape. We met each other at this event. It feels weird sitting straight ahead, so I'm going to turn it and face you. We met at this event about 3 years ago randomly. We sat at a dinner, I believe, the second night, had a glass of wine, started talking.
Well, that's how it started, the wine.
Hey, watch it. And so a few glasses of wine later, we're here today. So I think the idea at the time when we first met was very much talking about some frustrations associated to gated content experiences, selling with confidence to sales, finding the ability to deliver against expectations for clients. And that was kind of the starting point for just general exploration. So I'd love to kind of maybe start there and get into your mind as to what were those key pain points that you viewed both just internally before you even get to Anita's reference of collaborating with an external vendor, and how do you align yourself to being open-minded enough to recognize a problem and then try to identify a solution?
So when we met, David, I was at a different company. So I've just joined ALM roughly 6 months ago. But the situation was the same. It's always particularly around, I mean, my background has been monetizing. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold. I may be difficult to hear. It's been monetizing data and leveraging the audience database for sales to bring opportunities to our customers. So the whole lead gen word at most organizations, or lead gen product, can be considered a bad word. Nobody really wants to hit their database. They don't want to hammer the databases. Editorial hates it when you sell a lead gen product, and that means hammering the data. Our organization isn't necessarily set up to deliver leads the way that the clients are driving it. And at the time, 3 years ago, the company that I was at was in many, many markets, and most of the markets didn't think lead gen was going to be such a demand that it is today. It was mostly in the high-tech space. Clients wanted leads. They only want leads. They only want the right leads. But then when they get the leads, they don't know what to do with the leads. And then they are sitting on the leads. And then they think the leads were bad. And because they weren't bad, because they didn't get to the leads. So, it goes on and on. So and I found that most companies have that challenge in the in lead gen.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the challenge comes back to perhaps some missteps early on in that sales process when you're engaging with clients, not getting the right expectations up front, not understanding their organizational infrastructure, their workflow processes around how they handle leads and what you can do as a publisher to try to get ahead of those pain points. And part of that can be solved through technology. Obviously, one of the biggest issues that I think all media companies suffer from is the ability to sell lead gen with confidence, and that was something that we've seen ALM really transfer through, which was, we referenced swagger. I'd like to believe that ALM's recaptured some of that, and to the point whereby it was getting to, I think, a concern where these lead gen campaigns were coming in and there was no ability or vision or forecastability to understand how they were going to deliver against customer expectations. And so part of our platform is that it allows publishers the ability to have access to on-demand scale whenever they need it. So I'd love to get your take on that and what's that meant to your organization.
Well, that was part of the challenge, is lead gen going to cannibalize other products? So, the fear of what does that mean in our organization to have to deliver a lead, to switch it. And the leads and the metrics are there, and the clients are able to track it, and they've got all of the technology to know whether that was a good lead or not. So that fear of transitioning or cannibalizing a product because clients now our customers want leads. They want good leads. So that was part of that challenge.
And I think to your point earlier, the ability to tap into on-demand scale directly is a byproduct of organizations like yours saying that they've got to stop hammering their database. Mm-hmm. There are a million reasons to hit your database. There's a million, probably more pressing reasons to use each and every mailing decision that you make with your audience and your customer base. And so on-demand scale in our world is nothing more than a click within an interface, and you're tapping into millions of B2B professionals as they're consuming content around the web. All of that's tightly filtered based upon your specific needs, but also your client's specific needs. And that even goes down to, like you said, they're expecting the leads fast. They're expecting the leads within certain infrastructures as well. So capturing a data point and having the ability to feed that lead directly and simultaneously into multiple marketing automation systems on the fly is something that most media companies and publishers aren't really predisposed to do successfully and or quickly, and most certainly without developers. And so that's something that I've seen you guys use at length, and it's uncommon to see when we first go into a publisher account and we talk about there's no developers involved in anything, and literally anybody using the interface can build a connector and send data to disparate systems. That becomes really powerful.
Yeah, so that's a good point. We're really good at building content, and we're really good at the audience, writing content that the audience wants to read. We know how to get the audience too. Absolutely. Pretty good about that. But it's taking those pieces, and we don't have the in-house resources to concentrate on building a platform.
Sure.
So going to partners. We partner with a lot of organizations to do that, to do things that we're not necessarily great at. And that's helped us build the business, augment existing business, really grow, and not be afraid of having the lead generation conversations and training sales. That's a big factor too, is working with sales, having sales understand the questions to ask, the right questions, and training them to make it a part of the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about in nodding our heads to Anita, that was just another point. Being in a position inside your company to not have an egocentric culture and recognizing what you can do and do very well, and recognizing what others do that they do well is pivotal in making these product level changes. Beyond the actual amplified aspect of lead gen, you've also made the point, as I think everyone here in the room would agree with, and that media companies are phenomenal at creating editorial, phenomenal at creating a brand, and aggregating audiences around common interests and themes. That said, there's been a consistent challenge with monetization models. The two most popular monetization models are obviously advertising supported and subscriptions, whether that's a paid gate or a paid paywall. We've, in essence, through our model, have invented a third alternative, which is directly, again, connected to lead gen, but it's considered direct. And so this is a model that you've deployed at length, and it allows our infrastructure to more or less apply a monetization layer on top of what would normally be a dumb form, if you will. So historically, publishers have a disparate hodgepodge of technologies where they're capturing data throughout their sites. It could be a HubSpot form. We've heard some folks in here say a Wufoo form, and so on 24, you name it. So right there, you've got disparate technologies all being managed separately. None of those have any monetization aspect, and you actually pay to use all of those various services. We're the complete opposite. And so we come in, we basically have a fully white labeled interface that seamlessly injects into all of your audience touch points. And as your audience engages with your own content, they're selecting additional content that's being recommended. That content recommendation logic translates into an extremely powerful revenue stream. I'd love to kind of get your take on what that's meant in terms of revenue growth, but also the idea around removing cost centers and turning them into profit centers, right? Typically, you're paying for technology that allows you to do some cool things throughout your site.
Well, that's part of the partnership,
Absolutely.
right? That's the part of why, why we do work together, and we actually monetize that content that you bring to us because we've got the right audience.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And
continue.
No, so I was just going to say that it's the fact that we don't have to build it, that we can get to market faster. And the one challenge that I gave David was that we need to be able to work with other partners too. It's not just
Sure.
your company. It's got to be how can we work with other partners in conjunction with this to sort of build this revenue driving model. Excuse me. That's going to be beneficial for us, and ultimately, we've worked together to figure that out because it's not always an easy fix.
I think that's the best part of these types of partnerships. When we're, again, nodding, Anita nailed all of these points, where you're talking about a very product-centric culture whereby the customers and/or partners are driving your roadmap, and you're not approaching the market with preconceived notions of anything. I would say our roadmap is 90+% driven by outside feedback points from publishers and/or clients. And so this process, like she said, didn't happen miraculously overnight, and it didn't happen without hiccups. But I think getting rid of that egocentric philosophy of approaching a relationship and just treating a vendor as a vendor and nothing more, and the vendor expecting to just simply get paid, has to go away. You need strategic partners to invest into your future growth, and conversely, they'll do the same. I've been lucky enough to be heavily involved in a lot of that sales training that you were talking about as well. That's exceptional.
Yeah, that's a good point because what you've been able to do is help our sales organization really understand how they position it and how they position themselves or ALM in that discussion, because there's big players, but we've got all of us that are in publishing have a unique right to win in these conversations because we've got that relationship and that content. And if you need an outside vendor to help you do that, because our customers are telling us what they want. They really are. And if your salespeople are asking the right questions, they're going to come back and say, this is what they want. And this is what we've got to deliver for them. So you either try to wring your hands in the back room figuring out how to do it, or you get these smart, these smart partnerships. I'm going to make a plug now for the BPA media marketplace because that's a partnership that's going to be a game changer for us, for all of us. And we have to be open to it and open to really thinking of them as our partner.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal point. I had a discussion last night, and a woman asked me, what would stop anyone from working with you guys? And I said, it's a great question. And my only answer was open-mindedness. And so, again, Anita hit that as well. So, very timely presentation. We've got about a minute and a half left. So what I'd like to do before seeing if you have any other additional questions, comments, observations. No?
About you?
No, not me. Anybody you want.
Or your company?
If not, I'd love to just quickly kind of translate these talking points into some tangible facts and share some specific data points. And so I can't see the bottom part of this up here, but this is the specific adoption that's occurred across our platform through this partnership. All of these are very meaningful figures. I wish we could get into a bit more detail to quantify them, but for obvious reasons, we're obfuscating a lot of these metrics. When you break down the adoption of the model, revenue growth is obviously the sexiest thing to talk about, but a lot of you are focused on operational efficiencies, making sure that people get the most amount of productivity time throughout their companies and become faster at what they do and or work more efficiently on things that are more important to be working on. The incremental content we had talked about, but the sheer volume of campaigns and merging that with the third from the bottom, so 1,000 campaigns and 90% faster to launch said campaigns really says so much to me. And that imagine if they were specifically focused on launching 1,000 campaigns and they didn't have that operational efficiency gain, what that would mean organizationally. I forget the exact number, but there were dozens upon dozens of people historically allocated to building campaigns prior to NetLine. I believe that's consolidated considerably.
Right.
Then on the user-facing side, 60% less, and we didn't really get into the user-facing tactics here, but one great byproduct and why it works so well is that there's 60% less typing for users as they're engaging with forms, which directly translates into better conversions and greater monetization opportunities. So
we don't have, the form abandonment, and then we can actually, stay in front of those form, the people that filled out the form.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's all cool kind of capabilities to remember the users and welcome them back for a really streamlined experience. But yeah, I mean, I think if there's any of you in the room who are focused on driving revenue growth, improving margins, and working more efficient inside your organization, we're certainly a great case study to learn from, speak with Joann specifically. I'm sure she'll share a lot more insights off stage.
And that last point?
Zero
cost.
cost.
Want to bring that up?
Yeah. So the platform's completely free to use. So you're getting a ton of amazing analytics packages, real-time data fulfillment, connectors into disparate systems, even organizations that we deem possibly competitive to us. If they're important to you, then they're important to us. That one is sometimes we are met with cross eyes and disbelief, but we've got many other happy partners here to testify that that's.
Yeah, I think that the back end reporting is particularly important because that's the kind of thing that's evolving so fast, and that's what our clients are expecting.
So thank you. We're all out of time. I'm going to skip Q&A to keep things on the schedule. If anyone does have questions or comments, we'll be available throughout the day. We both have other sessions throughout the week. So thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I think Joann and David did a great job in capturing the opportunities that strong partnerships provide. And as we're together for the next 2.5 days with a lot of smart people with great ideas and great opportunities, I mean, look for those cross-sharing, cross-partnership opportunities that add tremendous value to your businesses. So thank you again, Joann and David.